Self-will. The 12-step recovery program, Alcoholics Anonymous, has helped millions who struggle from alcoholism, and then it's been applied to the families of those who struggle with alcoholism, all kinds of other addictions, problems, issues. It's an awesome program. Step 3 says, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Okay, so it's a very spiritual program. The founders of AA, Bill W. And Dr. Bob Smith, Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob Smith, both got their sobriety with the Oxford Society, the Oxford program, and they learned, which was a Christian program, and they learned these principles there and then turned them into the 12 steps. But that step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. It's very important because we first admit in step 1 that we're powerless over our addiction, people, places, things, ourself, whatever that is. Believe in step 2 that God can bring us back to sanity and restore us, so we get that hope. And then 3, we turn over our will. When you recognize that your will, my will, has not made our lives better, has not fixed things, mine hasn't. When I get very stuck in my will, I actually kind of make a mess of things. When I dig in my feet and stand there and say, no, it's going to be this way, it's going to happen this way, then usually things get worse, especially if I'm imposing my self-will onto other people and trying to tell other people, my adult children, my spouse, my siblings, my in-laws, if I'm imposing my will onto them, then I'm pushing myself in a direction that's only going to lead to disappointment and probably disharmony in relationships. So in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, they kind of explain self-will this way. This was way out of the 3rd edition, 1976, pages 60 through 61. Picture this, okay, as I read it. Each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show, is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. If only his arrangements would stay put, if only people would do as he wished, the show would be great. Everybody, including himself, would be pleased, and life would be wonderful. So do you think about that? Do you think, okay, now we're talking about this guy's an actor in a show. He's trying to be the producer. He's trying to be the person that arranges the lights, the scenery, the other players, and the actor that's a part of the show is trying to run the show. That's how we are in our lives. We are one individual. Each of us is, well, I shouldn't say we're one individual. Each of us is one individual person. We can only run the show if we can figure out how to do that for ourselves, for yourself. We cannot tell other people how to run their lives and how to live. We cannot arrange everybody around us and say, you do this, you do that, you do this. And I mean, I've tried that. Even getting ready for a family vacation and trying to get everybody to do their part is a nightmare when you try to order everyone. Try to get people to actually live their lives the way you want them to live their life. Doesn't work. So we've got to be careful. The big book talks about self-will run riot. Self-will run riot. What that means is that when my self-will just starts to riot and really, gets in there and goes crazy, I really mess things up. So when you think about your self-will, ask yourself, where is my self-will focused? Is my self-will focused on making other people do what I want them to do? Is my self-will being placed over God's will? Is my self-will what I'm pushing for my life and my agenda with God? Or am I willing to turn my will and my life over to God? Am I willing to ask God to let His will be done? That was part of the Lord's Prayer. Let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Am I willing to say to God, your will be done in my life, not mine? I'm willing to surrender. I'm willing to let go. I'm willing to give up and to give this to you. That is what we should be doing. It's hard because our self-will is strong and our self-will is entrenched and we've got a lot at stake. So turning that will over to God is not easy, but it is something that does need to be done. And it's a really important question to ask yourself. Is my will turned over to God? You don't have to be in a 12-step program to apply these principles. These principles are very spiritual principles, and they're very helpful. So ask yourself that question. Have I surrendered my will in this situation that I'm in my life, in my marriage? Have I surrendered my will to God? I'm going to read you the 3rd step prayer of Alcoholics Anonymous, just to kind of wrap this up. I offer myself to thee, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy prayer, of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. So it says, take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life, not my power and my way of life. So James 4:13 through 17 puts it this way. Now listen, you who say, today or tomorrow, we will go do this or that. We'll go to this city, that city, spend a year there, carry on business and make money. Why, you don't even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Poof, it's gone. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogant schemes. All such boasting is evil. If anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them. So what you ought to say is, if it is God's will to do this and that, I will. Now, doesn't mean you have to get rigid and crazy with that, but just that is your attitude. You need to be aware of that attitude and aware of turning your will and your life over to God and be open to doing His will rather than your own will. So that self-will will not run riot in your life, and you won't sit there and become frustrated by trying to arrange the play like you think it ought to go. Thank you for watching this video on Change My Relationship.